Well, hello and welcome back to the Crocheteer YouTube channel. Today, Toby is going to be showing you how to make a beautiful crochet mallard duck. So, get on with it, Toby. Show us how it's done.
And to make this pocket-sized duck, here is what you're going to need. We have a selection of colours here. Now, the one I'm going to make, like you saw in the introduction, is a mallard duck. So we're going to have a green head, a white collar, we're going to have a brown body, and an orange beak. I'm doing this one, so if you want to do that coloured duck, you have a demonstration of how to do it. But you could also choose to make your chick entirely cream with an orange beak or whatever colour you like. So that's the wool. I'm using a 4.5mm crochet hook. I would recommend you use a 4mm, but I'm using this one so you can see what I'm doing easier. A pair of scissors and some toy stuffing. My one is from Hobbycraft, but you can get yours wherever you want. So, to start off, we're going to make our round, and we're going to do that with the colour you choose for the head of the bird. So I'm going to use this green, pop that to the side. So getting the end of the green wool, we're going to start with a slip knot. Let me just find, here we go, there's the end of my wool. So we're going to start with a slip knot. We're going to pop that onto our hook. And now we're going to do 2 chains. And we're going to single crochet 6 single crochet stitches into the first chain. So that's 6 single crochets into the first chain. And that completes our first round. Now we're going to increase the next row. So we're going to increase every single one of those stitches. That's going to be 6 increased stitches. To do an increased stitch, we're going to do 1 single crochet into a stitch, and then we're going to do another single crochet into the same stitch. That turns 1 stitch into 2 stitches. If you do that for the entire row, you'll then end up with 12 stitches at the end of our second round. And now we're going to do that one more time. So we're now going to work in a pattern. Because we're increasing 6 for each row, we're going to do an increased stitch, but this time we're going to space it with just an ordinary single crochet each time. So that's going to look like doing 1 single crochet, and then in the next stitch we're going to do an increased stitch. We're going to repeat that pattern of 2 stitches 6 times. So that's 1 single crochet and an increased stitch. And we're going to repeat that. That's 1 single crochet and an increased stitch. And we're going to repeat that 4 more times to take us to the beginning of the row. And you will now find you have 18 stitches on the round. Now we're going to do 3 rows of single crochet. But before we do that, grab your marker string. So I'm going to use my cream wool here. And this is going to act as a marker so we know where the beginning of our row is. You don't have to cut this string from the ball of wool. All you're going to do is slot it in between where you've just finished your next stitch and the stitch you're going to go into. If you pop both of those tails out to the right, and you hold the wool you're crocheting with to the left, you're then going to continue as if it's not there. So we're going to do 3 rows of single crochet, and you should have 18 stitches on the round. And when you come back to your marker wool, you know you've completed one row. Now we're going to take that bit of marker wool at the front, we're going to put it through to the back, so we're going to tuck it underneath the stitch we've just done and continue crocheting as normal. So that's now our second row. And once again, when we come to the end, we're now going to take that same bit of marker wool and bring it back forward. You're going to see that this wool will end up snaking through the crochet, marking where the beginning of each row is. And for our final row of single crochets. And there we have our 3 rows of single crochet. Now we're going to decrease to finish off the head of this duck. And so for this final row, we're going to move that marker string back through the crochet. And now we're going to do the opposite of what we did to increase at the beginning. So we're going to do a decrease stitch followed by a single crochet. So a decrease stitch is when we pop our hook in to one stitch, we pull a loop through, we pop it into the next stitch and pull a loop through, and then we make those 2 stitches into one stitch by pulling the wool through all of those loops. So that's a decrease stitch, and then we're going to space it with 1 single crochet. And now we're going to go back round and we're going to do that pattern 5 more times. So that's a decrease stitch and 1 single crochet. And another decrease stitch and a single crochet, and keep going round until you get back to your marker wool. And you'll see your head there is starting to go back in. Now we're going to pull that marker wool back through, and we're now going to decrease all of our stitches. So that's going to be 6 decrease stitches. There we go. And you'll have 6 stitches left at the end there. Now we're going to work back out. And for this design, we're going to be using cream to be the collar of the neck. So I'm going to remove this cream marker wool. We simply do that by pulling the wool. And mine's got jammed, but it should slide out nice and easily. Let me find the other end of that. There it is. There we go, just needed loosening. And you can pull that marker wool out like so. And we're now going to swap to using that marker wool. So, to do that, we're simply going to pop this marker wool in our hand as if it's the string we've been crocheting with the whole time. I'm pinching it between my right hand fingers there, just to keep it in place. And then we're going to crochet as normal. So we're going to pop in the hook, and we're going to take that white string instead, and now crochet with the white wool. So we're going to do 6 increased stitches. So we're going to bring the duck's body back out. So that was 1 single crochet, and we're going to finish that increase by doing another one. So that's our first of 6 increased stitches. So do 5 more increased stitches. And there we have our row of increasing. Now you will have just one bit of green there, and that's from where the top of the last stitch has carried over. So we're now going to move into our next row, and because the mallard duck only has a thin white line, we're already going to move on to our next colour, which is this biscuit brown, I think it's called, or it might be like a fawn brown. And so we're now going to move on to our next row, and we're going to do the same as what we did for the head. So this time we're going to do an increase and then a single crochet to space it out. And just to cover that gap, I'm going to continue 1 or 2 more stitches with this white wool. So that means in this green one, I'm going to do an increase stitch, and this is the beginning of the second row. So that's an increase stitch. And then without pulling so on the second single crochet of that, I'm going to pop the hook in and I'm going to pull a loop through. But to stop that white carrying over and me having to do this again in the next row, I'm going to take my brown wool and I'm going to finish the stitch off with the brown wool. So now that I've pulled one loop through on that single crochet, I'm going to take the brown wool and pull a brown loop through. That'll make it a more seamless finish. So then I'm going to do a single crochet, and that is now the first pair of my next row. So that's 1 increase and a single crochet. We're going to copy that pattern around 5 more times. So that's going to be an increase stitch now with our new colour, and a single crochet. And again, an increase stitch and a single crochet. And keep going round with increase stitch and a single crochet, increase stitch, single crochet, until you get back to the beginning. So what you'll notice there is I've done 6 and I still have those white stitches. That's because at the beginning of the last one we increased, which turned that 1 green stitch into 2 white stitches, but we're now going to stick with the brown, so that doesn't matter. Now at this point we still have easy access to the head of the bird, and because of that we're now going to add in the stuffing to the head, because it will become more difficult later. So I'm using the Hobbycraft toy filler stuffing. I'm going to take some out of the top here, about as much as I think I'll need, and sometimes this stuffing can get quite clumped together. Stuffing can form these kind of hard lumps, so we're just going to pull it apart to make it nice and fluffy and make sure that it's going to feel soft in the toy. So once you've loosened it up, we're then going to pop it into the head of the bird. Now, because I'm on the brown wool, I'm actually going to cut these 2 strings. I don't need my green or my cream wool anymore, so I'm going to cut them off. They're going to go into the head as well to act as a little bit of stuffing, and then I'm going to pop in the toy stuffing. I think I overestimated how much stuffing I'd need here, so I'm going to make sure it's firm enough, but it's not too stuffed that you can see it through the stitches. So there we have the head of the bird, and you can see the white collar. Now we've got to do the body. So the theory of the body is going to work like this. At the beginning of every row, we're going to do an increase stitch, and then we're going to single crochet all the way around until we get back to the beginning of the row. That means that the back of the bird is going to increase out while the front stays flat. So once again, we're going to get our marker wool. That's going to make it easier for us. This time I'm going to use this offcut of green as my marker wool. We're going to pop it in between the stitches as we did last time, bringing the thread we're using off to the left and the marker wool off to the right. So the first thing we're going to do is an increase stitch. We're always going to start with an increase stitch, and then we're going to single crochet all the way around until we get back to the beginning of the row. And once you get back to that marker wool, we're going to pop that marker wool back underneath the string we're crocheting with to make the mark, and then we're actually now just going to do one single crochet and then do an increase. Now this is pretty free. When you're doing these increases, it's up to you to decide where you want your increases to go. Sometimes we'll add one single crochet before we do the increase, and sometimes we'll straight away do the increase. What that will result in is almost this slight zigzag of increases down the back of the bird, which will make it look slightly more rounded. And we've gone back to the beginning of our row, so we're going to get that marker wool, pull it forward, and we're now going to do an increase stitch as our first stitch. And then crochet, just do a single crochet row all the way round. And we're back to the beginning of the row. We're going to move that marker wool backwards. We're now going to do one single crochet, again just to space out those increases, and then we're going to do an increase stitch. And we've got back to the beginning of the row. So we're going to do one more increase row. So I'm going to bring that marker wool again back to the front. We're going to do again one single crochet at this time, because I can see that if you look at the marker wool, it travels diagonally down the back of the bird. So actually I'm going to do two single crochets. There we go. Two single crochets just to counteract the way that's gone diagonal, but I want the increases to go straight down the back. So you will have to judge that yourself. Add in single crochets to counteract the diagonal movement of that marker wool. And now going to do an increase. Now you'll see the back of the bird has increase coming out, but the front goes straight down, and that's what we want. So we're going to finish this row off by single crocheting all the way around. And there we have the majority of the body of our bird. Now, just to make him a little bit deeper, we're going to do one more row of all single crochet. That will just round off the bottom to give him a little bit of a rounded bottom. I think that would be quite cute. One more row of single crochet, and then we're going to start the decreasing. So we can pop that marker wool back through and do our final row of plain single crochets, no increases this time. Brilliant. Now we're going to count our stitches and see how many we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. It's not a very even number. But if we have 23 stitches, we're then going to just do one single crochet at the beginning of the row. Oh, I missed my marker wool. Remember to pull your marker wool through at the beginning of that row. Okay. Marker wool is through. And we're going to do one single crochet just to counteract the fact we have an uneven amount of stitches. And now we're going to, let me just do my maths, we're going to want it divided by 3. So 21 works. Okay, so we've done one single crochet, which has taken us to 22. We're going to do one more single crochet. There we go. So that's going to be starting the row with 2 single crochets, and that's going to give us 21 stitches on the round. We can divide that by 3, which is what we want. So we're going to do a decrease stitch followed by a single crochet. Now the reason I divide it by 3 is I'm just doing the calculations on the spot. When we decrease, we take 2 stitches and then we're going to space it with a single crochet, meaning we're going to do a pattern which uses 3 stitches. We're going to repeat that all the way around. So that's going to be a decrease stitch followed by a single crochet. And keep going with another decrease stitch and a single crochet. And follow that pattern all the way around. And now we're back to our marker wool. So that pattern of 3 was repeated 7 times, if my maths is correct, meaning we'll have 7 less stitches than we did. So 23 minus 7 takes us to 16. That means we're going to do 8 decrease stitches, and that will bring our stitches down from 16 to 8. Now at this point you might have got slightly different stitches to me. I understand that's because this bird is one of those birds which we're doing slightly custom, but as long as you're roughly in the same area, you'll be okay. We're going to decrease all the way around, bringing our stitches down from 16 to 8. And there we go. We now have a small opening on the bottom. We're going to sew that closed. So we're going to leave about a finger's length of wool. So if we cut that there. And then just to finish off neatly, we're going to pop the hook into the next stitch and do a slip stitch. So that means pull a loop through and then just pull it all the way through the loop on the hook. We're going to pull that tight to fasten it off. And we can now remove that marker wool. And we have the head and body of our duck. So while we've got that opening in the bottom, we're once again going to grab our stuffing. We're going to take out a chunk and we're going to fluff it up. And now we're going to pop it into the base of our duck. Again, I've taken too much. There we go. Now, once you're happy with the firmness of the stuff, we are going to close up this hole at the bottom. We're simply going to do that by inserting our hook into the stitch nearest where this string comes out. We're going to pull the wool through, all the way through. We're then going to pop it in the next one, pull that wool all the way through into the next stitch, all the way through, and continue doing that for all 8 of our stitches. So just keep popping it in, pulling the wool all the way through. You'll do this until you get back to the first stitch. So this is where I started. We're then going to pop it back into that first one And now that the string's gone through all of them, when we pull that tight, it will pull that hole closed. And it'll look nice and tidy. So now just to finish that off, I'm just going to wrap that piece of wool around a random part of the crochet. That'll just secure it a little bit tighter. And then popping the hook into the duck, we can pull that end of wool and tuck it away inside the bird. So that's the hard work done. Now we've just got to finish off with the wings and the beak. So, starting with the beak, we're going to find the front of our bird. So, you'll see here I can actually see this is where I moved from the rows, meaning I know that it was down here that I increased. So, that's going to be the tail of the bird, and you can see that side sticks out more than the front. So, popping that side to face away from me, that gives me the face of the bird. So, I'm going to pop my hook in the middle there. You can see where I've picked up in between two stitches. I'm now going to take my orange wool. I'm using quite burnt orange here, but you can use whichever shade of orange you like. And we're going to find the end of the wool. There we go. Now when you have a bit of wool that looks like this, it's all fluffy and stranded, I'm just going to cut that. So it's a nice straight end, makes it easier to work with. Now we're going to pull this loop of wool through where we want this beak to start. We're going to do a single crochet. Now, because a duck has a slightly wider beak than a chick, we're going to do this beak larger than we did when I made the chick. Meaning once we've done one chain, we're then going to go back into that hole we started, and we're going to pull another loop through and do a single crochet. And we're going to repeat that. We're going to do another single crochet, and you can see we've made a slightly wider beak. Now, we're going to go into the other side. So we're going to flip the crochet over. We're going to pop our hook into that same hole, and bringing this wool that we've been using to crochet with over the top, we're going to do a slip stitch. And you see that's pulled it back round, so it's a slightly flatter beak there. Now we're going to take our scissors and we're going to snip the wool. We're then going to pull the wool all the way through, pull it tight to fasten it off. And then, just to keep it nice and secure, we're going to take the original thread that we used when we cast on and the thread we've just used, and we're going to tie them together. Tie them together, tie them nice and tight, and then do a double knot. So tie them again, and that will just make sure you don't get flappy bits of wool coming loose. We're then going to pull that wool back into the rest of the bird. And there we have our beak. Okay, now we're going to do the eyes. Now with our black wool, we're going to make the eyes for the bird. So we're going to take the black wool and we're going to use the beak as our reference to the front of the bird. We're just going to pop it in the side where we think we want our eyes to go. I'm going to go level with the beak, as I think that'll be the cutest. And I'm now going to pull a loop of wool through. And then I'm actually, to save my time, because I know I'm going to wrap plenty of wool around here to make it a nice big eye, I'm going to keep that as a loop. But I'm going to take my hook out of the loop. I hope you can see this. Working with black wool is always a bit more difficult. I'm going to pop a bit of white felt here, so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. Okay, so with this black loop, I'm then going to pop my hook back into the place where I pulled it through, and I'm just going to pull that whole loop through again. And you can see that just means as I pull it through, I'm taking 2 strands of wool rather than 1. You can just wrap it around as you would a normal bit of wool if you wanted to. There we go. So now that's the equivalent of doing 6 rounds of wool for the eye. I'm then going to cut the wool. I'm going to cut it quite long, so that's about 2.5 fingers lengths. And I'm going to bring it round to the other side. Now this time I am just going to bring 1 bit of wool because that's going to be easier. Bring that round to the other side in the same place. And I'm going to wrap that bit of wool around the duck. I'm going to make sure I do that one 6 times so the eyes are even. And there we go, after a bit of neating up, we have 2 eyes on our duck. So that leaves us with one more thing to do, and that is the wings. So, we're going to make the wings attached to the bird, so we're going to try and do as little sewing as possible. So, to do that, we're going to find where we want the wings to end. So, if we think of the bird, I'm holding them upside down. This is where I want the wing to start, and then I'm going to count probably about 3 down. I want it to end about there. So I'm going to insert my hook there and pop it through. So we're just going to pick up from there. We're going to take the colour of the wings. For me, that's this brown. And I'm just going to pull a loop through. I'm now going to do 1 chain and then a single crochet in that part that I've just picked up. I'm now going to go diagonally across and upwards and pick up another loop from the crochet and do a single crochet, and then 1 more diagonal up and pick up a loop. So now what we've done is we've actually picked up a row of single crochet from the main body of the bird. I'm then going to do 1 chain, I'm going to flip it over, and I'm now going to do another row of single crochet. So that's going to be 1 stitch, and working down the stitches we just made, 2 stitches and 3 stitches. Now we're going to flip it back over, and this time we're going to do 1 chain and we're going to decrease all of those stitches. So we're going to pick up 1 with a loop, pick up the second one with a loop, pick up the third one with a loop, and then once we've got all 3 of those stitches looped, we're going to pull that wool through all 4 of those loops. And now that we've finished off, we've only got 1 stitch there, we're going to do 1 chain, and then we're going to slip stitch in the base of that first stitch. So if we flip the bird so the beak's facing us, you'll see down in this bottom corner, we're going to insert the hook back into the original part that we picked up this row from. We pop it through, we're going to take a loop, and we're going to pull it through that original loop. Now we're going to take our scissors, we're going to cut it, and we're just going to pull that wool through and pull it tight to fasten it. Now we're going to pull those threads into the chick. And there you can see he now has a little wing. A wing that is folded backwards, so it almost looks like a real bird, the way they fold their wings in. So we're now going to take that same idea and do it on the other side. To do that, jump back to this timestamp and repeat the process. And there we have your completed duck, now with 2 wings and a face. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it easy to follow. If you did, hit that like and subscribe, and make sure to let me know in the comments what you want to see tutorials for. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.